Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Porky in the North Woods, released in 1936. It's the 148th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Gone Collection Volume 4 DVD set, also on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set. There is a high-definition version lurking around. Hopefully that'll make its way on disc at some point in the future. In case you haven't seen this one, I can't show you the full thing here on YouTube due to copyright and all that jazz, so in this one we see Porky run a game reserve where he's, trying to look after the animals. We have the bad guy deciding to try and capture some animals in his deadly traps, and Porky gets wind of it, and then the animals later on attack the bad guy. Porky pretty much doesn't really do much at the end, but anyway. It is what it is. So you're first going to see a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did before I had to take that down. You'll hear a few new thoughts from me, not that many in this one I think, and then you'll hear from my good friend Austin Kelly, the self-professed Tashlin-holic. So grab some popcorn and enjoy some Canadian fun. Well, if you want to see Porky being tortured, well, here's your chance. That's pretty full on with the steam and the such creative gags. I have to say, yes, it's just a cartoon, but yeah, that must be really painful, and it would do so much more damage than the cartoon would suggest. But yeah, look, that's nothing against the cartoon. It's just an observation, and right away you can see Tashlin's use of fast cuts. I mean, they're barely even a second each. Like they get faster and faster and faster. I mean, each one of those would have had to be drawn, although maybe he just zoomed in on a few and then sort of cheated a bit to do less drawings. I don't know. I like how he just plays on the whole cuteness thing. I mean, these, beavers and all these other animals, you feel for them, They're so cute, and you can't help but laugh when they just get into just this bit of mischief here where they're fighting over this one apple, which of course is a trap that the bad guy has set. The bad guy being played by Billy Bletcher, Jean Baptiste, the French-Canadian, I believe, and Bernice Hansel does the cute voices that you hear in this one. Joe Doherty continues to do Porky. Now, this bad guy, as was literally foreshadowed before, you just saw nothing but his shadow until now. He's got the same design as the Commandant in the previous Porky, Little Beau Porky, which, well, personally I think was a little bit better than this one, but that's okay. This one's still got some pretty good gags, but he's so tough he doesn't flinch when he gets a hot iron put on his hands. But it's amazing how Frank would just show all that drama. It was like a really sad moment. Like, it was both funny to see the different patterns, I guess, of the different animals' tails, but it was really an emotional moment, and and Frank was just so good at both. Of course, with his comedic timing and all the gags that he does, but you actually feel sorry for these animals. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to bawl my eyes out or anything, but the way it's done, you're definitely sympathetic, and that's why Frank Tashlin was definitely one of the best directors Looney Tunes ever had. Here's one way to save on costs. You got these multiple shots, but of course that will be just the same character animated once, and then they just copied it, because, I mean, look at that. Because it's my understanding a lot of the shorts under Leon Schlesinger, look, you don't normally see too many characters in one shot, because of course that costs a lot more money, and Leon's a bit of a penny pincher, so it's always interesting to see shots like that. But they would have probably drawn one, maybe two, with different movements, and then just copied it, and then they just filmed it, and that's that. Like here, for example. So those are my original thoughts, and they're pretty much the same when I was rewatching it now, especially in high definition again and all that stuff. So I did notice a couple of interesting things. I guess what stood out to me the most is just how interesting it is that we just don't see the villain. We see, it's like in a 3-act kind of thing. You first just hear the bad guy in the beginning, and he's like, no fishing, no this, like, I know my accent's terrible, but anyway, so he's complaining. Then when he notices that his traps have been sprung, but with no animals, you just see then his shadows. And then, of course, when he's really annoyed and sees the animals getting, of course, I don't know, fixed up by Porcupine, but anyway, then, of course, you finally see the villain who, as I mentioned in the commentary, appears to use the same model as the from Little Bo Porky. So I just like that whole, setup of, what's this bad guy going to look like? So, yeah, it definitely stood out to me. And what else stood out to me is that I already commented just how great the speed is, right? But when the beaver is, rushing to get help and then he comes back, I do like the fact that, we had all this cutesy stuff and then we had the dramatic moment, but then we always got time for that one funny gag, right? Where it's like, well, you're the one in the trap, so I'm going to take that piece of fruit. So, yeah, that was wonderful. And I don't know, you just look at that disgusted face of that other beaver where it's like, really? You came back just for that? Really? So, now, there is a reference where the beaver says, I hope this won't be a permanent wave.
But look at my poor tail. I hope it won't be a permanent wave.
Now, that is a reference to a 1930s hairstyle, the wave, which seems to come and go in waves, fashion waves. I'll see myself out. And yeah, since doing this track, I learned that Tashlin wasn't exactly a fan of Porky. He's made his thoughts known on that. So I guess he must have had a bit of fun when, towards the end, Porky gets tortured with the iron and, all that other stuff. So, yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if he did, but anyway, he was still a consummate professional. I mean, Tashlin got the job done, and despite his feelings on the character itself, so yeah. Now, my good friend Austin Cowley has some thoughts on this particular short, and just a few thoughts in general regarding what type of short this actually is, and a few notes on Carl Stalling as well. So, take it away, Austin.
Hello, everybody. Austin Kelly again to talk about one of my favorite Frank Tashlin films, Porky in the North Woods from 1936. Now, Frank Tashlin, of course, is doing an excellent job in this short, as he always is. And there's one thing I want to highlight, is that this short is a drama, which is interesting because it's something that we don't get very often in Warner Brothers cartoons. Most of the cartoons are strings of gags with a very loosely related plot line. Well, some of them have more focus on story than others, but very seldom do we get a real thriller or horror film or a drama or something that really grabs you, almost like an action movie. Porky in the North Woods does that incredibly well, and it's very clear that Frank Tashlin was thinking above and beyond as far as the standards of animation went. And this is confirmed by his interviews with Michael Barrier and all the historians, but he really was in the cinema mindset, in the film mindset when he was making animation. And then later on, he was thinking about making animated films when he was doing the live action stuff. So the films really look like cartoons and the cartoons really look like films. But it's stuff like Porky in the North Woods. It's really dramatic. Porky's Double Trouble, which we'll get to, is also a genuine thriller. Like, that storyline, that core idea could have been made into an excellent 90-minute live-action feature, So there's a lot to admire about that. But I do also want to give a shout out to Carl Stalling, who is also very new to the Warner scene. He had been doing music for Disney and Iwerks before this, and I think the Van Buren cartoons as well. But Carl Stalling's music, this is so early on, one of his earliest cartoons as well. He is just on point. And I've mentioned this before, but the early Carl Stalling scores, wherein there's not a lot of original Stalling music, and it's Stalling's variations on cues or songs, and he's taking from all over in this cartoon. He's got classical music with Poe and the Peasant, he's got Little Man You've Had a Busy Day, Canadian Capers, all these pop songs for the time, and these classical pieces, and he's merging them into one unified score, which is honestly a very hard thing to do because so many different songs from so many different eras. So I think Stalling does that really well, and he adds to that dramatic undertone. And this is talked about in the Mark Kausler commentary which I'm sure we've all watched for this cartoon. But some of the things that Stalling does to the songs, it's not that he plays them just as they were written or arranged or released, like Little Man, You've Had a Busy Day. He transposes the songs according to the mood. So he's playing Little Man, You've Had a Busy Day in a minor key, this very slow, somber rendition for this scene of these poor, helpless animals walking into this hospital in the middle of the Canadian woods. I mean, it just adds to the brilliance of that scene and to the whole cartoon. So I wanted to give a shout out to that as well, because I mean, Stalling is just as brilliant as Tashlin is, of course. And I also want to give a shout out to the writer, who is, drumroll, unknown, because there were no writer credits on the Warner cartoons at the time. And if there are, then it doesn't even seem as if the writer credits for the 30s cartoons are accurate, because really what the Warner system was on was a rotating credit system. So some guy in the story department would get the credit for the cartoon, and then the next guy would get the next credit. So it's really hard to tell who wrote these cartoons, but the story for Porky in the North Woods, again, has that dramatic film feel, so it almost feels like Tashlin had a big part in the story crafting of this one as well. But anyway, great cartoon, great to talk about it. Anthony, thank you for having me as always. As we go on into the Tashlin filmography, there will be bigger and better things to say about the cartoons as they become more fleshed out and developed. And as we see a shift in tone very soon from Tashlin, keeping that dramatic feel always, but also adding in more comedy and more speed and being funnier, and that is where we can attribute this Warner Brothers style, as it's called, this fast, funny type of cartoon, really mostly to Tashlin, and to maybe an even greater extent than we could to Tex Avery. But we'll get to that in the future cartoons, but until then, thanks, and I'm Austin Kelly.
And thank you, Austin. So yeah, I do agree that as we get along and the shorts become a little bit more refined, I think we'll get more and more thoughts, not just from Austin, but also from me. And, there might be a few other guests too, like my good friend Manny Cruz and Toonie Tanner. He loves The Case of Stuttering Pigs, so he'll definitely be on for that, unless he's been a bad boy, But in any case, in terms of rating, see, here's the interesting thing. I admire this one more on the technical part of it, and I like some of the humor, and I do agree with Austin. This feels more like a drama with a bit of comedy in it. But is it my go-to Tashlin? No. Is it entertaining? Oh yeah. But see, if I give it a 7, it feels too low. Maybe 7.5, close to 8 out of 10. I think that's about fair. It's a solid short. Technically absolutely amazing. Some wonderful animation, but yeah, definitely give that score. Oh, and also, it's all as we head into the new year, because this is the last of 1936. We're going to start seeing more and more familiar names pop up, and this is, of course, the first credit to Norm McCabe. And he will end up becoming a director himself in a few years after his short was released. So yeah, more things happen afterwards. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.